Back home, the fate of the Turnbull government's national energy guarantee rests in the hands of state and territory energy ministers who are meeting in Melbourne today. Joining us ahead of that very important COAG meeting is the Federal Energy Minister, Josh Frydenberg. Minister, good morning to you.
Nice to be with you.
How confident are you the states and territories will get on board today?
Look, I'm confident that they understand the urgency of the situation, the importance of integrating climate and energy policy, and that the national energy guarantee is the best way forward. It's an opportunity that we can't afford to miss to deliver cleaner, cheaper, more reliable power for all Australians.
States like Victoria, the Labor government in Victoria, have been holding out, arguing that 26% emissions cut under the guarantee is nowhere enough to meet our international obligations. Is there any wriggle room on that?
Well, we believe it is, and we've got a good track record, Michael, in meeting our previous targets. Our first Kyoto target, we're on track to beat our 2020 target, and our abatement task has come down by 60% on our 2030 target in the last 2 years. So the electricity sector is 1/3 of Australia's emissions. We're taking action there, but we're also taking action in other sectors. And let's not forget, it's the Commonwealth Government who has primary responsibility for signing up to international treaties, which was the Paris Accord, and we will implement it so that we meet that commitment.
Is there scope under this agreement, if there is agreement, for a future government, say a future Labor government, to ramp up the emissions reduction target?
Well, we are proposing to embed in federal legislation the 26% target. We would make the case that it's critical that we have certainty for the sector so that that doesn't change. But of course, the Parliament is always sovereign, so legislation can be changed. But our key point is that the industry needs certainty, that 26% is the right number, and we need to bear in mind that you can't just turn the dial on emissions reduction just like you can with the volume on your stereo. There's big impacts on reliability and the affordability of the system, so we need to be very considered and we need to act with purpose, and that's what we're doing.
Are we finally, Josh Frydenberg, on the brink of the end of 10 years, more than 10 years, of both policy and political paralysis on energy policy?
Well, you're right. This is an issue that's bedevilled the Parliament for more than a decade. And as the political battle lines have been drawn, it's the consumers who are the casualties. So we can't have extreme ideologies determining policy in the energy market. We need to properly integrate energy and climate. We live in a carbon-constrained world. At the same time, we need to bear in mind the impact on price and on reliability of hastening the closure of coal and bringing in too many intermittent sources of power, namely wind and solar. We need to do it in a really considered way, and that's what we're proposing.
You might get agreement today to further those discussions, but how worried are you about a continued rearguard action from within your own party, the Conservative wing, pushing still for a new coal-fired power station to be put into that general mix?
Well, there was a strong support for the national energy guarantee when I took this issue to the party room last year, and I think everyone recognises that power prices are still too high, and that one of the things holding it back is a lack of certainty for investors who are making 30 to 40-year bets. They're betting, Michael, beyond the immediate political cycle or indeed the next political cycle. They need to understand that there is a market signal that is stable, that will encourage more investment. Once they get that, we'll get more supply and prices will come down.
Are you worried, though, about being undermined by some of your colleagues?
No, I am
pushing for a coal-fired station?
I'm very confident that my colleagues, as the Prime Minister and I, and the Treasurer and others have recognised and spoken about, we need to move forward with the National Energy Guarantee because it is the recommendation of the experts, it's received widespread support from business, industry and community groups, and it's backed up by modelling which will see power prices fall.
To another issue, Minister, are you as appalled as everybody else in Australia at the revelations coming out from the Banking Royal Commission this week?
Absolutely. And the banks are a pillar of our economy, and the banks need to be a pillar of our society. They need to do better. There needs to be a cultural change in the banks, and it actually vindicates the decision by the Turnbull government to extend the terms of reference to include insurance companies and superannuation industry so that we get the best possible look at what's going on in the industry, and I think the Commissioner is doing a very good job.
The government, though, as everybody knows, had to be dragged kicking and screaming to set up the Commission in the first place. Would you like to take this opportunity to apologise to Australians, Josh Frydenberg, for vociferously at times opposing even the idea of a banking royal commission?
Well, Michael, we've taken action on a number of fronts to get better behaviour within the financial services sector, to get greater accountability, to increase the penalties, strengthen ASIC. We've done all of that. And I think the Royal Commission, now with the expanded terms of reference, which Labor opposed, that we supported, I think that is a step forward.
Do you feel any way remorseful about opposing the concept of a banking royal commission?
I think we've got the balance right, and we look forward to the recommendations.
One of the other stories this week is your phone call with Peter Credlin, the former Prime Minister Tony Abbott's Chief of Staff. She has described that phone call she said she made to you after you criticised Tony Abbott for cutting across the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, as a warm conversation. Was it a warm conversation?
Yes, it was, and
She didn't try to pull you into line?
Look, I've known Peter Credlin for a long time. I'm not going to go into the details of the conversation other than to say that I stand by my words. I'll continue to call it as I see it. And we need to remember who our real opponent is. It's Bill Shorten. The alternative to Malcolm Turnbull is Bill Shorten, and that's not a good alternative for Australia.
Should Peter Credlin be making those calls to cabinet ministers in the first place?
I'm not going to add to what I've already said.
Josh Frydenberg, thanks very much for joining us on News Breakfast.
Good to